If you're tired of manually drafting follow-up emails after client calls, then this video is for you. So I'm going to show you how you can automatically turn transcripts into beautiful follow-up emails without lifting a finger using no-code tools like make.com and GPT. This will allow you to save more hours, close more deals, and also appear more organized and buttoned up in front of your clients. And the best part is it only takes 15 to 30 minutes to set this up, and I'm going to show you how to do it step by step. Now, this is make.com. It's a no-code automation tool, which allows you to basically create these modules and connect them to move data from one place to another. Now, in an effort to keep this video a bit shorter, I'm not going to cover the basics of make.com in this video. I'll plan to create a beginner tutorial that'll walk you through the basics of Make so you can become a pro level user in no time at all. So let's take a look at the automation. Watch for new files added to my transcripts folder. We're going to download the file because Make needs access to that document. We're going to send it over to OpenAI, where AI is going to then draft that email for me in my tone, in the structure that I want it to create the email in. And then finally, it's going to create the actual email draft, and we'll see it sit in the folder in just a minute. So there it is, it's creating that draft. And now if we hop over to the email, here's a recap of what we discussed. Here are the main points. Here are the next steps. I will send over a proposal with the scope, timeline, and pricing within the hour. Once you've reviewed it, we can schedule your brand discovery session to kick things off. Nice salutation, and that's it. Didn't have to lift a finger. So I'm going to show you now how you can create and implement this exact automation into your business. Okay, so what we're going to do first is we're just sitting in the dashboard in make.com. So under scenarios or under your organization, you'll find a button in the top right-hand corner to create a brand new scenario. So that's what we're going to do. And so you have a blank canvas to start creating your automation here. And if you're new to no-code tools like Zapier and make.com, you'll have what are called triggers and then actions. So something has to trigger the automation to run. And then subsequently, there will be actions that we'll go ahead and complete once we start that automation. So the first trigger we want to grab is the Google Drive folder. So in here, what we'll do is we'll want to watch for files in a folder. So this triggers when a file is created or modified in a very specific folder. So that'll be the first piece. Now, I already have my Google Drive account connected to make.com. If this is your first time connecting, what you want to do is click add and then sign in with Google. Now, when it comes to the connection, just make sure to name it something that makes sense. I gave it a login email associated with my sign in for Google. So it's more memorable. And if I need to go back and edit it or select it for future automations, I can do that. So you'll sign in with your account and then you'll be connected. It's that easy. Now, the next thing we'll want to update is, so we've got an option here for watch files, and we can choose to either select to look for files by the created time, or if we want to watch files that have been updated in the drive, we can also change that to modified. So let's go ahead and just do by modified time. We'll go ahead and choose the drive where the folder exists. So let's select the folder to be watched, and let's go ahead and look for that transcripts folder. We can watch for very specific types of files, so Google Docs, spreadsheets, slides. I'm just going to leave this as all. And then the limit here is 2. So how many files do you want to process in this automation at once? If you limit this to 1, that means only 1 file can be processed at a time. You can increase this as needed if you have more sales calls or transcripts that you need to process at any given time. I'm just going to leave this at 2 by default. And let's go ahead and do from now on for now. Now, there's one more important thing to note here on triggers in automation workflows. Typically, you can either run them instantaneously if the app allows for it. In this case, we have to use what's called a polling method. So we get to choose how often this automation will check for new files in that folder. In some cases, like a contact form on your website, it's powered by something called a webhook, which instantly transfers data from the contact form. So maybe you're using Typeform or Fill Out, or you have a Squarespace form. The second someone fills out a form on your website, it'll trigger the automation instantaneously. It'll send the details of the contact form into make.com, and then you can do all kinds of things with that. In this case, we actually have to set the cadence. So this scenario is going to be run at regular intervals, 15 minutes, depending on how many operations you want to run through. So I'm going to go into to Make real quick and check out the pricing. So with Zapier and Make, their pricing model is based off of the number of operations that you use. And an operation is when an automation gets triggered. That's one operation. And then any subsequent actions that occur in that automation. So if you have 5 steps in your automation and it runs once, it's going to cost you 5 operations. If you've got 20 steps, it'll cost you 20 operations. If you are digesting 10 transcripts every day, and that workflow has 5 steps, that's 50 operations. So it can get pricey. However, if you're just starting out, Make is still a very great tool and also very affordable as well. So 10,000 operations a month, if you're paying on a monthly basis, is only $18. But if you look at something like Zapier and their pricing, if you wanted to pay monthly for 10,000 operations, which is quite a lot if you're starting out, you are looking at $193 per month. So the pricing is pretty significant when it comes to these two different tools. Make does have a free plan, by the way. So if you're just starting out, you can create multi-step automations. It costs you $0 a month and you get 1,000 operations every single month. Again, if you're just starting out, this is going to be a great option for you. All right, so heading back over here, the more often we check, the more operations we're running, right? So let's say we want to check every 60 minutes. If this is for discovery calls, you might want to decrease that so that you're able to respond to your clients a little bit more quickly. So let's do this. We're not going to activate the scenario just yet. So we now have our first module set up. It's the Google Drive. We're going to be watching new files added. So the next thing to do is add another module. Make.com doesn't have access to that file that's been saved in the Google Drive. So we now need to give it access. So once this triggers, it says, hey, I know that there's a file here. What do you want me to do with it? So now we will need to go back to the Google Drive module, and we are going to download that file that we have just saved in the drive. Okay, so here is where we start mapping data from one module to the next. What we'll want to do is, instead of selecting from the list, we're going to enter this manually. We're going to map the file ID that we get from this module here. So let me go ahead and do something here. Let's unlink this real quickly. We're going to go into the drive and duplicate this transcript. Now what I'll do is I'll drop it into the transcripts folder, come back to the automation and just run this. And I've unlinked this module because we haven't mapped it yet. So we're just going to run this. And what's going to happen is you're going to get a lot of information about that file that's just been dropped into that folder. So you'll get things like the link associated with that file. And then most importantly, what we're looking for is the file ID. So it's the ID related to that file that we just uploaded. So that's what we want to map over here, and we want to download that specific file. Let me reconnect this. So the file ID, you'll notice that it's pulsating because we are grabbing data from that first module. We want to grab that file ID. This is dynamic information that is going to change every single time you drop in a new file. So this ID is going to change, which is why we don't want to copy and paste this ID manually and drop it in here. All right, so now that Make has access to this file, we want to feed this into OpenAI, give them the information so that they can draft an email response for us. So how do we do that? The next part is going to be accessing the OpenAI module. What we want to do is upload a file. Now, Again, if you're setting this up for the first time, you're going to have to connect your OpenAI account, and that is not the typical ChatGPT interface that you're used to. There's actually there's a separate account that you have to set up for this. So if you go to platform.openai.com, it's going to take you to the developer platform. Now from here, you're going to want to head into your settings in the top right-hand corner. A couple things you want to do. You want to load your account with a little bit of funding. So if you head over to your billing section, I have a few dollars loaded in here. If you're not using OpenAI very heavily, this $5 or $6 in my case is going to go a very long way. So unless you're creating a ton of blogs or newsletters, or you are scraping sites at scale, cold email campaigns, that kind of stuff, this is going to go a very long way. So that's the billing. The next thing you want to grab is your API keys. So over here on the left-hand side, API keys. And you can see that I've got a few API keys that I've set up for testing purposes or for production. And what you want to do is you want to create a new secret key. So you want to name that key something memorable. So maybe this key is just for make.com in general. So we'll do make.com, example, select your project. It'll have a default unless you have any other projects that you've created within OpenAI. And then you'll create a secret key. It's going to give you an API key that you can use to insert into your automation. And then when you hop back into make.com, again, similar to how we connected Google Drive, we'll want to add a connection here. Again, name this something memorable, add your API key. Your organization ID is optional. You don't need that. So once you have the API key entered, click save, and you'll be able to connect your account. Now, what's nice about this module is that it already knows that you've downloaded a file into make.com via this module here, and it's going to grab that file for us. So we don't have to do anything extra with this module. One other thing, we'll want to just make sure that the purpose has been set to assistants. So the next module that we'll want to add is the OpenAI message an assistant. Let's go ahead and message an assistant here. And that assistant is going to be our make.com sample assistant. Now, if we hop back over to OpenAI, what you'll want to do is head over to your playground in the top right-hand corner, and then over to assistants. And GPT assistants are kind of like the back-end equivalent to the GPT interface that you're used to working with. So instead of having a chat window where you can interact with it back and forth and have a conversation with GPT, this is the back-end version. You can connect a GPT assistant to automation workflows like the one that we're working with today. But other than that, it's very similar. You're going to prompt it similarly to how you would with a GPT conversation. So in this case, I'm going to keep it very, very basic. How you set this up, make.com sample assistant. So just give it a name. System instructions. You are a helpful, intelligent assistant. We're going to use the GPT 4.0 model for now. You can decide and use other models as well. Pick one that is best fit for your scenario. And we're also going to give it access to both, let's say, file search and code interpreter. So this is going to allow it to access the file that we're uploading into it. Okay. Text response format is text. And then if you want to play around with things like the temperature and top P, what this does is it actually helps to either increase or decrease the level of creativity that AI has. So if you want it to get more creative with how it selects the next word that it generates in its response, you can mess around with this. But the lower it is, the less creative it is. And that's it. So that's how you create a very basic assistant. We're going to go ahead and come back over to make.com. So now that we've selected that assistant here, what we'll want to do, and I'm going to copy over my prompt from the other workflow so we're not having to copy and we're not having to type this out manually. So the role is user. We're going to add in that prompt, and I've gone ahead and added a few extra guidelines here just to help the response that AI generates come out just a little bit better. But Best practice, we want to assign AI a role. So you are a helpful, intelligent email writing assistant for a creative branding agency in this case. Your task, based on the call transcript provided, write a friendly follow-up email in a warm conversational tone, summarize key points, and include clear next steps. So here you can get as detailed as you like. If you want to have more sections in your email, less sections, if you want to provide additional instructions on how to generate the specific text within those sections, you can add that here as well. Now, guidelines, what do you want it to do or not to do? How do you want it to output the content, right? Output only the contents of the email. Sometimes it'll say, hey, so-and-so, thank you for this. In this case, I only want the key points, next steps, that's it. Do not include the subject line. Do not output any explainers, just the email itself. Output in plain text, not in markdown. So sometimes it'll output with like the asterisks and other, punctuation and things that we don't want. Okay, the last couple things that we want to do within this module is just make sure that it can access the file that we uploaded in previous steps. So we are going to give it some tools. So we want to give it actually, let's go ahead and show advanced settings. We want to give it access to both file search and code interpreter. And then when it comes to the code interpreter resources, you see that I've uploaded a bunch of files for testing purposes. What we want to do is we don't want to select these are kind of static files. We want to actually map the file that we've uploaded from earlier in the automation. So we'll select the file ID that we uploaded in this previous step. So again, this is going to be dynamic and it will change every single time you upload a new transcript. And then lastly, we can also say we want the response format to be text. We've already selected that within our assistant. This will just override any settings that you've had before. So let's click save and let's try this out. So we'll pop back over to the Google Drive. Maybe what we'll do is I'll just make another copy of this and then drop that into the transcript folder. And then we'll try this new automation. So let's run. So you can see that it grabbed that new file we just dropped in, downloaded it into make.com, uploaded it into GPT. Again, we are creating that email copy that we can, that now just only lives in make.com. So we'll need to actually have another message or another node in order to, okay. And so it seems like we're running into some kind of issue. It couldn't access the file for some reason. So let's take a closer look at this, this module and see what happened. ID model, it has access to both file search and code interpreter. Let's take a look at file search resources. I believe what happened is I select file search here instead of code interpreter. So it does say that ID of files that will become available to the code interpreter tool is in this thread. So what we actually needed to do was choose code interpreter here. So let's run this again. It should recognize that change and hopefully this module will work properly this time. All right, awesome. So I didn't quite explain these little bubbles in the top right-hand corner, but every time the automation processes data through each one of these modules, it returns some kind of summary and data of like what it processed, right? So in this case, we downloaded a file, so it has a lot of information about the file that we downloaded. Here we've uploaded a file. Here we've messaged that custom GPT assistant that we created, and it'll give us information like what was the prompt that we gave to AI, and also which tools it had access to. So code interpreter resources, it had access to the file from before, and you've noticed that this one ends in LMQ. This is the same file that you'll find here in the output bundle ID, LMQ. So what we want to look at here is if we go into the output of this module, we get the content and we can look at the text that AI generated. And under value, in our case, it's going to say, this is going to be our generated email, right? Hi, Jess, thank you for taking the time to chat with me about your consultancy needs. It was a pleasure learning more about your business. Here are all the summarized points, right? Next steps, and then closing. So this email now only lives in make.com. We need to get it out of make.com so that we can actually send the email. So the last step is to add an email module. So we'll do this. Look at, and you can directly send that email out if you feel comfortable and you've tested this automation enough times to know that it's reliable enough. But we can go ahead and just draft an email, right? Let's do that. Create a draft. That way you can review it, make any tweaks before you send it out. In this case, we will choose where we want this draft email to be saved, and we'll go ahead and select drafts. Similar thing here. When you're connecting a new software for the first time, you want to log into your account so that it has access to it. In this case, you just click add, select the connection type. So if you're in Gmail, it's Google. You've got Microsoft here, and then IMAP for anything else. All right. The to field, we want to add a recipient. And so in this case, because we don't have the email address, I'm just going to go ahead and hard code this. But when you're doing things like grabbing contact forms, you should already have, these email addresses ready to go. So I'm just going to say, I'm going to put my personal email address in here. Subject, discovery, call next steps. And then content type, let's go ahead and use plain text though, just to make it easy for ourselves. And then the content, so this is the content of the actual email itself. We want to grab the output from the most recent module where we generated the email itself. So under content, text, and value, you'll see here it populated with, "Hey Jess, thanks for taking the time." We just want to drop that right in here inside of the content field. And then lastly, you do have the ability to add any attachments. So if you wanted to add any pitch decks or other resources, you can go ahead and do that. Under advanced settings, want to just show you one more thing. You can CC folks, BCC folks automatically. The from field, sometimes your name doesn't populate correctly. So what you can do here is you can see that there's a sample. So it says John Bush, testemail.com. What you want to do here is just say, here's my full name and hello at. Okay, so this is how your name is going to appear in the receiver's inbox. Cool, let's go ahead and leave it at that. And we're gonna run this one last time, make sure that everything works properly. Okay, so it's grabbing that file, uploading to AI. AI is generating the message, and it's going to take a minute. If you choose to use a lesser model, one that may not have as much reasoning power, could be beneficial to you. Not only is it a little bit less expensive to run the automation, so let's say you're using a 4.0 mini, could be faster as well. Okay. So it's completed the draft. Now, if we head over to the draft in Gmail, you'll see that now there's a second email that has popped up here via the new automation that we just created. So let's go ahead and click in here and see what we got. So thank you for your patience. Here's a friendly follow-up email based on the transcript. So we'll want to look at the prompt there and see what's going on, because that's exactly what we asked it not to do. You may need to tweak it to prevent it from creating any unnecessary pieces like this. So yeah, make sure that you iterate, test the prompts, get this formatting where you want it to be. And then once you can trust this process, the second that you've created that transcript, it's going to generate this draft within minutes. It's going to save you a ton of time. Hopefully you found this helpful. Make sure to like and subscribe if you're wanting more beginner-friendly automation tutorials.